Hello, welcome to the second session of the day at the Gwed Ireland Graduate Careers Fair. Now we have our second session is something that, I believe is long overdue, and it's a session on making it as a creative professional. Such an interesting area, so many different facets, and we're privileged to have so many different voices here to help you make choices in relation to this career. And Dawn O'Connor from IADT is going to chair this session, and I'm going to leave you in Dawn's capable hands and that of the panel. And we'll be back in about 20-25 minutes. Please put some questions through to us here, and we'll do our best to get through them all. Okay, so Dawn, over to you, and thanks again.
Thanks a million, Rory. Thanks for that. And welcome to everybody on the panel today. So I'd love to welcome Oren from TOTEM Design Agency. I'd love to welcome Lorenzo, Tonti, and Sheila Naughton as well. Huge expertise here today in terms of kind of that creative field and making it in the creative industry. And I know, Sheila, you're coming from, you know, an artistic background, and same with you, Lorenzo, in terms of lecturing as well and all of that kind of thing. So lots of different avenues today that we're going to be looking at. But I suppose, you know, I'm going to start with a very general question, I suppose. What is it to be a creative? What is it to be a creative today? Or a creative professional?
Yeah, I'd be happy to start with that one. I think creativity is a way of thinking, and it's also an attitude. It's a way of thinking in terms of a non-linear thinking. You don't always take the logical route, but you ask yourself, can something be done differently, and can something be done better? And that's really the fundamental way of thinking as a creative. So if you can kind of take that on board, it'll stay with you all of your life in all sorts of areas.
Okay, thanks. So there's something about kind of questioning there, constantly questioning, seeking improvement, seeking can it be done a different way. That's what it is to be a creative. Yeah. Okay.
I was going to say, Dawn, you're starting off with the big questions. That's not an easy one at all.
I think we could probably just take a half an hour just on that particular one question.
We absolutely could. You're dead right. You know, and I suppose, yeah, it is a big one. But you know, if you've anything to add or throw in, do throw it in.
Can I just say, I think what Sheila is saying is exactly right. And I was thinking, because I did my degrees actually in contemporary art. So I started off in the arts, and I've now transitioned more into the kind of what you call the working field, I suppose, where you tend to make a bit of money. But I can come back to that. But I suppose the value that I would see on a degree in art is just the critical thinking and the questioning that it gives you, and that'll never leave you. And I think that is just the main absolute value that you'll get out of it. You will have to add things to your art degree in some form or other, whether it's a qualification or experience or something else. But it's that ability to see around corners or think a little bit differently in a non-linear way that is absolute maximum value.
Yeah, and
sorry, go on.
Go ahead, Lorenzo.
Well, I think we can just add the same things to the design field as well, graphic designers. I mean, we all have to have that certain way of thinking, of seeing things that gives us the edge, I guess. Regardless of what creative field we're in, we have to be able to look at things differently, whether it's for a design field that is commissioned work for a client, or whether it's an artistic field where you're working for expression. Then, you know, it's the same thing. The same abilities need to be there.
Yeah. Okay. And so for me, I think from what you were just saying there, Oren, and what you're just saying, Lorenzo, is that, you know, you've to be creative in terms of what it is that you're doing and thinking about those things differently and forcing yourself to do that. But it's also about kind of thinking about what it is that you're doing differently. So where this may bring you is endless, right? It's, you know, this degree. Sorry, Lorenzo, go on. You took a breath.
No, necessarily. No, I'm just thinking that, you know, it's when you're leaving college, when you're finishing college, you have to keep doing what you're doing. You have to be keeping curious. You have to explore things. You have to be creative in one way or another, and you have to keep at it nonstop. I mean, I keep telling my students it's not a job. it's not 9 to 5. It's a way of living. And I don't think that once you're a creative person, you can switch it on, you can switch it off. That doesn't work like that. I think it's something that you do, and you do it all the time, and regardless of what that is. If you work as a designer or as an artist, you may have other outlets for your creativity that you have to pursue. And I'm saying specifically have to pursue, not want to pursue. I think you have to be creative in whatever way you choose to be.
Okay.
Can I come in slightly as Deborah's
Yes.
advocate here? Because Lorenzo is exactly right. You're learning how to be an artist and think like one, but you also have to understand, and it's what your parents will say to you, there won't be a job at the end of this degree. So you have to keep that in mind. When I went back, I actually went back in my early 30s as a mature student to do contemporary art, because I started off with fine art and antique evaluation, and for which there was no jobs around. So, and then I went back and I did the contemporary art, but I was disappointed kind of halfway through to think, I actually don't know what I could do with it at the end. So I think you have to put that expectation aside a little bit and keep an eye out for what you can add to it as you go along, because you're learning something invaluable while you're in there. So there's kind of two roles to it. One is you're learning what you're learning, and the other one is to think, how can I use this in a job, or how can I translate it out into something that I can then make a living with?
Okay, so, okay,
Yeah.
sorry, Sheila, you wanted to come in there.
Oh yeah, I was just going to say that one thing that has changed immensely since I would have left college, and I did an MA. My background is actually in design, and then I went into education after working in industry for some years.
Okay.
And then I did the opposite to Oren. I transitioned to fine art. So I suppose we both have experience of two different fields, both design and fine art. I think sorry, what was I going to say now? Oh yeah, attitude will help a student go a long way. They need to have a willingness to learn. They need to be interested. And I suppose the key skill to everything is communication. Communication would apply obviously in design, but it also applies in art, where you have an audience and you really have to engage that audience. So you always have to look outside yourself and really have a feeling for what the other person is thinking and where they're coming from. And if you can do that, you will get on better with people, and there will be more teamwork involved, and you'll find it easier to function in a big company, because big companies can be quite difficult. And the opportunities have changed from, say, when lots of us came out of college years ago, designers looked for jobs in design studios, artists did their own thing, working alone in the studio. But now you find that the big companies put a value on creative thinking. So the Facebooks, the Googles, the Accentures, the Microsofts, they will take on 100 people in a year, instead of a design studio that might be able to take on 2 or 3. So just to bear that in mind, that those skills you have, they will carry you a long way, and not just to have a narrow focus, but to keep your focus very wide.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I love that you said that, Sheila, because, I think that a lot of creatives just don't see themselves there. And, and you'll find that, in a lot of ways, creatives won't have LinkedIn pages sometimes. And then there's a miscommunication there, isn't there? Because there are a number of companies going out there looking for their corporates, they're looking for creatives, they're on LinkedIn, but then the creatives aren't on LinkedIn. Right. So,
well, actually, sorry, I was just going to say, a lot of those companies will have something on their website, do you want to work for us? So check out all the companies that have that. But it seems obvious, but a very fundamental thing that a student needs to know is really they need to let people know that they exist and what skills they have and what they can bring to something. So,
what are the key skills? If I could drill down on that, because I think that you guys have a really clear idea of what the key skills are, and a lot of time graduates are kind of wondering, what are my skills? So if I could ask you to just list out 3 skills each, what would they be that that these graduates have coming from a creative background to make it as a creative professional? What do they need?
I will one. Sorry, Sheila.
Yeah, no, you go ahead. So you'd be better for that, yeah.
Key skills. So I'm now studio manager. We're a branding agency, you know, in Dungarvan and Cork. We work with creatives across all sectors as collaboratively as part of our projects. One of the big, there are two skills, I suppose, that are in huge shortage, and I think any student could upskill on them as they go along. One is copywriting, and the other one is videography. Like, honestly, it is so difficult, and you make a really good living, particularly as a copywriter. If you have any sort of inkling for language, and you can do it as part of your art degree, you know, because you're doing your art history and everything else. If you can brush up in that, honestly, there is definitely spaces. I would say those sort of little things, it's now easier actually to make a living as a creative, or to monetize your creativity, I suppose, essentially, you know, because there are those, it might be hard to kind of find them out because they're now not mainstream jobs just yet, but they are definitely in demand, definitely.
Okay. Anything else that pops up for anybody in terms of key skills that they
Well, I suppose, yeah, I mean, I suppose as skills go, if we're going away from the practical end of skills in terms of software, and I mean, those are skills that are easy to learn. That you learn those if you don't have them already. That they're easy to pick up. But things, be skilled at working with people. You're part of a team. You have to have a certain ability of working and listening to people and what is being said. You have to be able to accept other people's opinions. Those are skills that are not necessarily natural to some people, but you have to have those. You have to be curious and you have to be passionate, because that's what's expected. You can do work that is perfectly acceptable, of course, but if you don't have that passion behind you, you will find that you get bored very, very quickly, and it's going to be the same kind of thing all over again every time. So you have to have a certain passion going into this type of work. And you have to keep active in terms of creativity, as I already mentioned. I just keep mentioning it. I mean, Oren mentioned language and copywriting and things like that. And yes, those are absolutely vital. And I agree. It's good to have people that can write. It's also good to have people that have other creative skills that can take, video, photography, illustrations, any kind of skill that you can bring to a working environment, be it a studio, an ad agency, or whichever it is. Those are skills that are a bonus. They will help you progress. It's very simple.
And I think, as a creative professional, much like any other profession, by the way, people love to see on your CV that you've been deep diving into some personal projects that you're doing purely out of interest, that you're honing your skills in lots of different areas and not just the area that you're selling right at that moment, right?
Absolutely. I mean, keep your interests up. I mean, if you're interested in other areas and other things, that may or may not be related to design, but just keep those up. I mean, just it's vital. It's absolutely vital that you have that.
And are there opportunities out there from your perspective, when from where you're standing? Like, what are the key opportunities that are available to recent graduates that are out there right now? Well, I talked about. Sorry, go on, Oren.
I'll start on this one because I worry a little bit sometimes about graduates coming out. It's very difficult to get an internship, and from an employer's point of view, it is very difficult to give an internship. So, for instance, at the moment, all of our staff have been working remotely since March 2020, and they still are, and we've left them there because it's working perfectly for us. But it has meant we haven't been able to have our WIT students in, which we always have. We haven't been able to have our TY students in. I always feel a responsibility that we do need to be having people in the office. So it's difficult to find a way to work around that. Now I've just decided to go for it, and we've programmed in a few, and there are students coming into us in the next few months. But what I will say is that there are opportunities around volunteering that are massively beneficial to have on your CV. I would be looking at arts organizations. I'd be looking at arts festivals. You don't know what runs in a local hospital. There might be an art project or just something that will give you that extra skill, which means that you're out. You might get a small contract from them. I think it's those sort of things that you need to be looking at, as well as Sheila said before, about the bigger companies now really valuing a creative skill as a base for starting a job.
Okay, thanks, Oren.
Yeah, just one thing I would say for students is, one thing that's changed dramatically really since the days that I was in college was Erasmus. The opportunity to go and spend 6 months abroad or 3 months or whatever. A lot of our students actually went to Holland, and there's a really good, say, for design and art culture there. And to Berlin, there's a really good art scene there. That experience, means they've brought something new to the table. And ideally for a graduate, it's nice if they can spend a period of time and travel really before they get weighed in with other responsibilities in life. And if they go abroad, they bring something new and different back, and they just have a wider perspective on life. And they're all very good things to bring into a working environment. So just to encourage students, I suppose, to avail of the Erasmus and to travel and to get as much work experience as they can while they're still in college, those long summers and things like that.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think you're right. I think when we think of Erasmus, we think of going over to another college for a term, but actually there are Erasmus Plus traineeships that you can use all the way through your college career for every summer you have. And you can go over and work for companies that you want to work for,
it's
you
great.
pick out your
Amazing.
top 10. Pick out your top 10 and start just getting, communicating with those in terms of, and there's lots all over Europe, as you said, Berlin and Holland being hotspots. But, I've had someone go into music in Amsterdam last year, there's loads out there. So it's just really about looking for that. Sorry, Lorenzo, you were going to come in there.
Yeah, Erasmus is brilliant. I didn't, it didn't exist in my time, so I didn't have that chance. But plan it, use it, go for it. If you want to go to a college in Holland or Germany or wherever it happens to be, make sure that you're going to it with your eyes open and you're going to it knowing what's there, what is outside of the college, who's practicing out there, what do they do, what kind of work do they do, can you make contact with them? When you're going out on an Erasmus trip, okay, you're in a different college and you're doing your course, but also use it as an opportunity to get connections, to see what's happening in the different countries, because those are all, networking opportunities. I think there's another talk about networks, I won't go into that, but they're all opportunities of doing research in your area that you want to get into. And it's essential that you do that. So Erasmus is great for that. Also opportunities, don't just think Ireland, think abroad. And don't set your sights on too small a goal. Go for the big fish while you're at it. The worst that can happen is they say no. And then you move on to the next one. And you create opportunities, very much so. I think particularly in the design field, I don't think opportunities happen to be advertised necessarily.
No.
They are just, okay, that's the other talk, networking again, but it's, you make the opportunities.
You're right, keep going. Yeah,
you make the opportunities.
Particularly in this field, right? Particularly in this field, it is around that networking piece. It is around kind of getting out there, talking to people, and actually starting with who you have to continue. A lot of people kind of try to go cold, and may not get much response. And we will be talking about that later, but it is a valid thing to talk about here as well, because we are talking about making it as a creative professional,
Yeah, well, and I think just to add one extra thing, don't forget that when you're going abroad, you're different from what's there.
Yeah.
Because you're a foreigner. I know I talk from experience. So you bring something that they don't have locally necessarily. Yeah. So already you're starting off with a certain edge. You're of interest because of that. And I think if you keep that in mind, then it makes going abroad kind of more attractive in some ways.
Yeah.
So,
And I love that you say that, because I actually lived and worked in India, and that was exactly it.
Right.
You know, you just brought something a little bit different, and suddenly you were different. In any room that you went into, you were a little bit different, and that kind of allowed you to kind of have a little bit more brand, right? Than maybe you would have had, you know, anywhere else. You know, and I know that's not possible for everybody, right? It's not possible for everybody that they can or want to even head off. They want to stay here and they want to work here as well.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I don't think anybody can or wants to, absolutely. But I think the same kind of things apply to within Ireland as well. I mean, if you're coming from a different culture that isn't in Dublin, you have to bring something completely different. I know that our students are different from the students that you get out of Dublin colleges. Talking to my colleagues in the industry, I know that's a fact. They are different. So.
And so if you were to tell somebody, if you were to give somebody kind of, you know, to look at your younger self in some respects, and, you know, how do you start? What is it that you'd like to tell them from your journey in terms of just getting out there and just doing it and deciding on this creative professional piece and going for it?
Wow.
What advice would you give? Am I asking all the big questions? Go on.
You are asking the big questions, you know, because we have many years to look back on now.
But I mean, you know, if you could give some really tangible advice, Oren, really tangible, that somebody could walk away from here today and go, look, this is a good place for me to start. Like, what is that?
I would say is actually even doing your degree is a good place to start, even if you feel like you're floundering or you're not 100% sure about it, or your parents are saying, what are you going to do with it? It is a good place to start. I would always have hope that you're in the right place where you are for the right thing that you're doing right now. You know, that would be the first thing. I would be persistent. I would be resilient. I wouldn't give up. I would see what I could add to my CV as I go along. You have no idea where it'll come back round. Something really strange that you've done will come back round at some stage and it'll be of use to you. And I would be saying yes to as many things as I could do. As a young person, when you have nothing else to be doing. Do you know what I mean? Or nothing to worry about. Yeah,
say yes. And I love the way you started with the degree, because actually your primary degree is your launch pad. I've been working in this area for a lot of years, and your primary degree is your launch pad. You just don't know where it's going yet fully, you know, and you've got to be open to that and to the opportunities that are there. And that's why you're saying say yes, because that yes can bring you down a path that you never even knew existed. You know, so I'm absolutely with that. Sorry, Lorenzo, you come on in there.
Yeah, I mean, just to keep grunting. No, absolutely. I agree with Oren. Absolutely. I mean, what I would say to a younger self, oh my God, do what you did more or less, and basically just kind of look at what you want to do, decide where you want to go to do that, and go for it. And then after that, decide where you want to work or what field you want to work in. But those are decisions that you have to make very early on. I don't think it's something that you can decide in year 1 and year 2 when you're in college, but you can think about it. And by year 3 and by year 4, you might have an idea, because you kind of need to, really.
Yeah, and it can be as easy as picking out, like, okay, look, if you were to look at all of these companies here, what are my top 10? Where would I love to work? What would I love to be doing? You know, and even if I don't have a definitive of what that is right now, like, what am I hearing? What am I seeing around me? Am I working on a team? Am I working on my own? Like, what am I doing? And then I start to look to see, you know, where those things are around me, and I start to pick the people that I want to talk to in terms of that, you know, to kind of pick their brains. That's what it's all about. Just picking their brain, seeing what their route was. And Sheila, did you want to come in on that? Sorry, Oren, go ahead.
I'd probably be the mammy figure here now, and I'd say do follow your interests and follow your heart. Even, you know, you can go for a high-flying, well-paid job, but if you're not happy doing it, the money at the end of the day, it's fine, but it's not going to give you satisfaction in life. But if you are interested in something and genuinely interested, it will engage you and time will fly. You won't feel like you're doing time. I worked in a place where it was all about money, and I realized early on that I actually wasn't very interested in money and I wasn't very good at dealing with money. But it was hard to walk away because it was a well-paid job. But I eventually did. And it was such a feeling of exhilaration and freedom. And it gave me a new set of values, really, to value things in life, like value nature, value your friends, value good food, value the kind of the pleasures that life can bring. So don't get stuck in the job that the only reason you're there is the money. I'd say that as well.
Okay.
So really, whatever you're passionate and interested in, try and follow that, because if you can't find a job in it initially, you will probably find a job where you can use that. So, you know, for a creative person, you might go into something that's about advertising, and you might find you're really interested in photography. So like, do the photography and keep doing it. And you might be able to use it in that company, or you mightn't. And if you can't, then you will find a company that you can use it in, you know?
Okay,
or
so
you do it yourself.
You're excavating your path. And Oren, sorry, I cut over you there as you were coming in.
Sorry, well, I was just going to add, I suppose the crux of it is, remember, you do need to turn it into a job. It's like everybody has to work. At the end,
I need to make a living, yeah.
You have to make a living. You have to put a roof over your head and food on the table in some form. So what are you going to bring with you that you can actually work with, I would think is one thing to think about.
Guys, thank you so much, Rory. I'm going to cut over to you because I know you're there and you maybe have some questions or...
Yeah, we've got a lot of questions, and some of them can probably be covered nearly by, I suppose, one question, and it's for people who want to work creatively and may be creative people, but because maybe, you know, they studied at a particular time, they thought a particular path, maybe they're working in a job that they don't particularly feel, you know, rewards that part of themselves. I suppose, what's the first step you can take for someone? There's several questions here, the same thing, the transition from being a creative professional to a non-creative, and saying what sort of education is involved. Now, I suppose if you want to work in data, you need to have a numerate mind to some extent, so you need some sort of education. For moving into the creative side, where's a good place to start if you were thinking about maybe, Donna, even you might know a better conversion course, something that would give someone the first step in that path. They may be creative people at home. They may have a very, you know, this may be what they visualize themselves, but how do they make that first step?
So are you saying, Rory, that they want to move from what is a non-creative profession into a creative profession? Yeah,
like, you know, several questions here. I said the same thing, you know, do I have to have a graphics design degree to work in graphic design, even though you know, they may be very artistic at home. They mightn't have the professional qualification to show for it yet. You know, I suppose, how demanding is the industry? And I suppose the industry needs to have standards. It needs to, like, these are all professionals here with us today, that they put the work in for qualifications and experience. And how do you kind of break into that world, I suppose? It's a very broad question, but I'm trying to cover 5 questions here in one.
Okay. So does anybody want to jump in on that before I do?
Well, I'd say Oren has something to say on that, and I probably do too.
Please share it with us.
So we probably have about 2 minutes left, Rory.
All right.
Yeah, it's okay. We can do a few more minutes. It's okay.
We can do a few more minutes.
Well, I'll answer that really quickly. Like, we get CVs in the whole time, and we hire people. They absolutely would have to have a primary degree in graphic design for the most junior position here. Yeah. You know, and then after that, it's the add-ons of whatever else they have done on top of that. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, because this is a hugely demanding space to work in as well, in terms of opportunities, in terms of standards, in terms of clients' requirements. So yeah, it's not just something that you can do on a quite an easy segue. Lorenzo, do you want to come in there?
Yeah, go to college, do a degree. And I'm saying that because I kind of see it slightly different. I think once you're a creative person and you want to have, and you have the ability, I think you can find work as a creative person. Having a degree, of course, means that you spend 4 years or whatever it is, 3 or 4 years to experiment, to hone your skills, to actually learn about the profession and what you're doing. So having that time, having those years to practice, to exercise and to learn is absolutely vital, especially if you're going into an area that you don't really know how it works. And you will have contacts with other professionals, and you will have contacts with other students. So I think it's a good exercise to do, absolutely. Whether you need to go to further education after that and do an MA and so on, that's a question of choice. But I do think that going into college is a good thing. I mean, we get mature students all the time, so
yeah,
probably call mature
and,
students.
and
I just
also I
add to
would add,
that
oh
and
sorry
say-
Sheila, go ahead.
Oh yeah, no, I was just going to add to that and say the nature of education now is very flexible. You know, you don't have to give up everything and go to college full time. If it's great if you have a degree, and you probably do need a basic degree now, but all through your life, there are workshops, there are online courses, there are modules you can do with, you know, universities. So always to keep open to learning new things, and just to keep, I suppose, to develop a good skill base, because the more you learn, the more you have to bring to the table. And also the more interesting the connections you can make between quite disparate elements. It's often in the big companies now, like the Googles and all that, they might take somebody who's a graphic designer, but maybe also has a passion for algebra, you know, because they will make some weird connection that will just open up new possibilities in that company. So, you know, keep your interests at the core of who you are and what you do. Work is a huge part of your life, and it's also your identity, but it's not the only part. And it's very important to leave space for what you're passionately interested in as well.
yeah.
Can I just finish off on that? Yeah. I think that it's actually transitioning from one creative industry to another one, then afterwards it also happens quite a lot. As we can see, if you go to exhibitions, the number of artists that worked as graphic designers or photographers that worked as graphic designers, it's mind-boggling. And it's just huge. And it just means that people that were obviously interested in a certain field also had an interest in another one, and maybe decided at some point or another that they had more interest in another area that they weren't working in, and they just moved across. So it's not, and they probably didn't go to college for doing that. They just kept up the interests and developed it slowly over the years, you know. So I think it's something that happens now, but it also happens later on.
Sorry, Lorenzo. Oren, so if someone has a question here, someone who's gone back into the postgrad in digital UX UI, and they have a lot of previous work experience, but there's been a big career gap, and you know, when they go for a job interview, they're going, right, well, where's your experience? But you have the qualification after changing career path, doing a postgrad. What advice do you have for someone like that? Because it does take a lot of resilience and able to deal with knockbacks when you're trying to start your career again.
Yeah, no, absolutely it does. And I did that. You know,
Okay.
I had a long gap as well. So I totally understand that. I suppose looking from an employer's point of view, it's definitely on a case-by-case basis. If the whole picture of a fee looks really interesting and the portfolio looks really interesting, that's actually what we're interested in. Do you know what I mean? And somewhere along the line, there was I'm not going to say real work, but like real projects. You know,
have the projects.
not just all hypothetical stuff, you know.
Yeah.
One thing I was going to say, which didn't come up earlier, is there is an awful lot of work now in engagement and in participation in the arts, and that is not to be overlooked. That is such a great way to be involved. Sure. You know, either on a contract basis, there's lots of those contracts around, or definitely something to look at for people, recent grads.
Okay. And sorry, Dawn, can I put one final question to you here? It's quite a unique one, but somebody's working in teaching at the moment. The teaching English as a foreign language, and they have a master's in publishing, and they want to be a copywriter. Any tips on where they could start, or some useful online courses, certifications, companies that can get in touch with, things they could research?
I mean, Oren, you were talking about copywriting there a minute ago. I think that, you know, they have a master's in publishing already, so that's a great start, right? So that's fantastic in terms of going into that industry and showing that you're able to write. Okay. And again, it's like Oren was saying about like having your portfolio and getting that together and really looking around at what it is that you can do to get involved in projects in kind of small ways within that, building up your CV, you know, when that leap is something that you want to do. And sorry, you mentioned something that came before the publishing, the master's in publishing. What was that?
They're a teacher. They're teaching English.
They're a teacher.
Yeah.
Okay, so that you know, so you can talk about that in terms of communication and in terms of all of that kind of thing. Like there's lots that can be brought, you know, from that vein into this industry as well. And looking around for conversion courses, getting onto Udemy, getting onto LinkedIn Learning, getting onto all of those things that are on site. There are lots of courses online now that you can do. And as Sheila said, you know, this doesn't have to be full time. This, you know, you can work while you're doing this. So there are lots of courses out there that you can do on a part-time basis.
Because I am going to bump into the next session if I don't wrap up. But I think the message is here that it's great to have the interest, but you have to do the work. You have to either do the creative. If you love it so much, do it. Write it, draw it, you know, get involved.
Get the portfolio together. I can't underestimate that enough. And Oren just wanted to jump in there for a second, I think. Did you, Oren?
I was just going to say about copywriting, you need your LinkedIn profile up there. You need pieces of work. You need to be sending out a little portfolio of work. That's how people have to read your work.
Okay.
And then they'll offer you business.
Okay, I'm going to be shot if I don't get off. Listen, thanks so much. And
thanks,
Lorenzo,
everybody.
Sheila, Oren, Don, thanks for hosting such an interesting session. And thanks again for joining us. And this will be available on the platform for the next 7 days. Thank you very much. Thanks so much. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Thank you. Bye.
Thanks, guys.
Bye.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.
Bye. Bye-bye.